As we were going through in those previous chapters, 1 Chronicles 17, we really saw the promise, the interaction that had been made between the Lord and David kind of touching this off with wanting to build God a house and recognizing as he was sitting there in a house of cedars that he wanted to build God a house. And initially, you may remember, for those of you who were here last week or have read this, we were looking at how Nathan the prophet instantly was saying, oh yeah, do everything that you want, do all that's in your heart. And initially it would seem like it was going to be a really good idea, but even a good idea motivated by worship for the Lord or whatever, it still needs to be done according to his way and in his timing. And David was just not going to be the guy that was going to build the temple. And Nathan had to be the one that went back and told David this, like, hey, I kind of got ahead of myself. And instead of taking that in a bad way, or, instead of David, as you could imagine possibly that he could have, instead of him getting into some sort of, wait a second, being disappointed or depressed or downcast, he took it the right way and he responded in the right way, where he received the promise of God in every great kind of way to say, the Lord said that he would build me a house, and I'm going to be satisfied with that. That's what a promise. And the Lord truly had in store for David a great promise. You see that with Solomon, and a lot of people can look at Solomon, who we'll read about later on in subsequent chapters, of all of the riches and the wisdom and all the blessing that came through Solomon and all, and then some of the descendancy that ended up happening. You have some of these great kings of Judah, and all that. Some of them far more noteworthy for good things, some of them kind of noteworthy for bad things. But you see this whole dynastic line that happened through King David, and it was really a wonderful and glorious promise, as you'd see even after the bad kings, fulfillment after fulfillment of the Lord keeping his promise. He ended up having an interruption in that. And even to this day, you could say, well, where's the promise of God related to this with David? Because there is no king in Israel. They have a president, they have a prime minister, they don't have a king, except for our King Jesus. And he, coming from the tribe of Judah and of the descendancy of David, he ends up being the ultimate fulfillment of the promise that we see given to David in chapter 17. Nevertheless, we see that there was this, along with this promise, there was the news that was given back to David to say, you're not going to be the one that builds the temple. And again, you could, David being happy or content to be able to say, well, that's all well and good. You could expect that maybe he would be a little bit downtrodden and he could say all the right things, but then, have kind of the actions that would say something different. And you know how that can be. We call that hypocrisy oftentimes, where you're saying one thing but doing another. And it's really good for us to be able to say and do the things that come in line, even if they end up being poor or unfavorable. It's a lot better, I think, oftentimes for us to be honest and say, I don't like this, and just to be able to say it, than to say that they like something and then by action not show it. David, we're going to see what actions follow this promise that was given to him, and this ends up being a really amazing, as Chronicles is going to record here. It doesn't go into all of the detail of certain things the way that like Samuel will record or whatever, but the reason that these things are given gives us a description about God and about the relationship that God has with David in the preparation for the building of the temple, and the things that were going to be important for them, especially as they would be looking to rebuild the temple, I think, after the Babylonian captivity, at the time that I think some of these 1st and 2nd Chronicles was probably written. So coming into chapter 18, it says, now after this, that is, after that promise to David that God had made. After this, it came to pass that David smote the Philistines and subdued them and took Gath and her towns out of the hand of the Philistines. I really like this verse, if for no other reason but the mention of the town of Gath. And you may not necessarily remember, but that's where that dude Goliath was from. He was Goliath of Gath. And you could imagine, especially for the children of Israel, as they were first coming into, out of Egypt and into the promised land, at the first time that they came, you remember they had sent 12 spies in? And the 12 spies, they said, oh, the land is great, agriculturally rich, wonderful it really is, as God described it, a land that flows with milk and honey. But you remember they had a problem when they came back. There was a bad report, and it's all great except they got these really big dudes there. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to take them out. They've got these giants in the land. And it caused the heart of the people to melt. They said, we must have looked to these guys like we were grasshoppers. And I think that's the way that we felt too. And it ended up being discouraging. It dropped the morale, and they ended up going and wandering in the wilderness for all this time. They ended up coming back and entering into the land, and there were giants that they ended up having to face. Well, some of them weren't even faced, you remember, until David was here. And this would have been, so much, all these judges that had ruled, and hundreds of years had gone by. There were still giants in the land, in the area. You end up having this Philistine, notable Philistine that we're all familiar with, I trust, of Goliath. And David, you remember, took that guy out. Well, he wasn't content just to allow that to happen, but look, it says that David smote the Philistines and subdued them and took Gath and her towns out of the hand of the Philistines. Think about how broken the enemy would have to be to think that they could have marched out their champion from Gath, and how strong and secure, how defensible their position was, Goliath of Gath, and yet now look at where Gath is. As it's recorded here. You see the dominance of David. And it doesn't matter however big they are. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. And, and you see this happening, whether it be with Gath or whatever else. Gath is subdued. Anyway, it continues in this, in a whole list of victories that David ended up having. It says, verse 2, and he smote Moab. And the Moabites became David's servants and brought gifts. And David smote Hadarezer, king of Zobah, unto Hamath, as he went to establish his dominion by the river Euphrates. This is amazing. Hadarezer would seem to be a Syrian king. Syria, at the time, may have had these two kind of separate regions with two different capitals, one in Zobah and one in Damascus. This guy, Hadarezer, was the king of Zobah, that kind of province, they would have been unified when they went to war in some cases, when an army was larger than them, but otherwise they would kind of operate as independent nations, in some ways. So we have this guy, Hadarezer, but you'll notice that his dominion by the river Euphrates, that's well north into Syria. It's well beyond where Damascus, present-day Damascus, still is. The river Euphrates. And this would have been for David to extend his land or his dominion all the way up to the river, up as far north as the Euphrates, was really a promise fulfilled that God had given way back to Abraham, talking about the lands that Israel would be able to have dominion over. The promises given to Abraham fulfilled here, even as we read this in chapter 18. It continues to talk about David's conquests, and it says in verse 4, and David took from him 1,000 chariots and 7,000 horsemen and 20,000 footmen. David also hewed all the chariot horses, but reserved of them 100 chariots. It's amazing. He didn't look at this as saying, well, we could really put these things to use. It seems as though for him to destroy all these chariots and horses and all, he saved 100 of them, but it really demonstrates that his reliance was not on the military might so much as on the Lord to give him victory. And I think, as you look at some of these things of what he was doing, to rely on the Lord is always a good thing. Didn't matter how big, didn't matter how bad, how difficult the situation in front looked, as long as he relied on the Lord. He didn't have to rely on what the enemy used. He could rely on the power of the Lord. I think that there's application for us in that. Anyway, continuing there, it says, verse 5, and when the Syrians of Damascus came to help Hadarezer, king of Zobah. David slew of the Syrians 22,000 men. Then David put garrisons in Syria, Damascus, and the Syrians became David's servants and brought gifts. Thus the Lord preserved David whithersoever he went. What a great testimony that is. You see all of the victories and all of the conquests and all of this stuff that's going on. You see that David, as he is accumulating these things, it says that they're bringing gifts. That is, that they're bringing these kind of monetary or gifts that would have been recognized for their worth. It's a demonstration of them being subservient or brought under. This would be almost the way that we would pay tax. We recognize, okay, the government has authority over us, so we are mandated to pay taxes. And so we pay our taxes. So this ends up being kind of a national tax. This would have been something that David is able to institute to them, almost like a racket or some of the protection money that ends up being given. Like, hey, you're under us now. You're going to bring some of your GDP to us, and we'll take care of you. So you see the way that some of this ends up being. They brought gifts. It says. Verse 7, and David took the shields of gold that were on the servants of Hadarezer and brought them to Jerusalem. Likewise from Tibbath and from Chun, cities of Hadarezer, brought David very much brass, wherewith Solomon made the brazen sea and the pillars and the vessels of brass. I think verse 8 really gives us the whole reason of why this is being recorded. And it's in context of what we had in the promises given in chapter 17. All of this victory and all of this provision, all of it was really being set aside to be able to build the temple. Here's a picture of David providing for what was going to be coming later on after him. The promise that God had given to him, saying, hey, your son is going to build the stuff. David didn't just sit on his hands and say, well, I guess I have nothing to do here, and just, pine away in uselessness. But he made himself, even for whatever he could, he was like, well, I may not be able to build it, but I can get the materials ready. I may not be able to build it, but I can secure the lands around and provide safety for my land so that they can end up building it. And you would need both. You'd need some of that security. You'd need to be able to have no real war to distract you. And you'd need to be able to have the provision to be able to build the temple. And so here is David setting about to be able to restore or provide a certain amount of order, fill the coffers so that there wasn't going to be any sort of delay or lag, that all of the things would be prepared. He could do a job of preparation. I find that to be really amazing. In that so often, I think people want to be able to have the recognition for themselves of their own accolades, of what they were able to accomplish in their own life. And we certainly see that with David. He was well known, and he had all kinds of accolades and all that. The killing of Goliath was one of the foremost things that David is still remembered for. And that happened in his youth. There's a lot of time that David had spent, you think about this, on the run or kind of the fits and starts, and he didn't really, wasn't able to really maybe get established until he's kind of later on here. And there are just all these different kinds of things. And I think, I kind of wonder if in David's life, the most consequential thing that he did in his life was the preparation for the temple. This was what would have been as an offering made back to the Lord for all of the things that the Lord had done for him. And yet, it's not the thing that we typically remember David for. I wonder if this wasn't really just between God and David. David didn't really care whether people were going to remember him for the preparation of the temple. What he seemed to really care about is really just honoring the Lord. So often you see this, especially in our day and age, everybody wants to be able to have their face out front. They want to be the influencer. They want to have the most popular podcast. They want to be able to make sure that everybody knows what they're doing. And everything ends up being so narcissistic in our society. Nobody actually seems to be thinking about what comes tomorrow. Everything is being geared towards how do we live today? What am I supposed to do today? And no preparation for what happens tomorrow. It's really a confusing and difficult kind of time, I think, especially for young people, in looking at what is so much of the preparation that is being made, and it doesn't seem like we're really going anywhere as far as building towards something, but just kind of surviving or maintaining what we've got, and we're kind of on the downhill slide of that in a lot of ways. Doesn't it seem? What about the preparations? What are we really planning for? What are we really building for tomorrow? You look at the, I hesitate to say it this way because I don't want to besmirch, or I don't want to denigrate the work of the Spirit. And I pray that this is the case, that the Lord really is doing a move in our lands today, that the Lord is really at work. But I match it up with what I believe about the end times. And I do believe that we're living in these last days. I really do think that these are the last days. And as such, I look at what I believe to be the typical overriding kind of tone of what is the church of the last days. And I find in Revelation chapter 3 that it's talking about the church of the Laodiceans. And too often it seems like I can read the testimony of the church of the Laodiceans, how they are not hot, and they're not cold, but they're lukewarm. And that God said, I'm going to spew you out of my mouth. You say that you have all of this stuff, and you don't recognize how poor and needy you really are. I get really worried that that's the condition of the church, and I think that is, by and large, oftentimes the condition of the church here in the United States. This is a picture of the church, especially in America. And by the grace of God, may it be not that way. But that there would be one more great awakening. That there would be another revival that would sweep across and take a hold of the hearts of our children. But how can we expect that to be the case if we continue to walk in a lackadaisical way with no preparation being made for the spiritual well-being of those who are coming after us? If all that we end up doing is just kind of coasting, saying, well, I know I'm going to be okay. If we were to do that, we're not really taking the example of what David was doing here. To be able to say, you know what, it may not happen for me, some of these things may not happen in my lifetime, but how do I prepare the ground? How do I provide for what would be coming after this? How do I help train up those that I do have the opportunity to influence? And I think it's always very important to be kind of looking towards, okay, how do I prepare this next generation to be taking over? If we just kind of get lax and comfortable and think that it's all just about us and not in any kind of preparation, we're not really doing any real service. In engaging in any kind of warfare, I don't think that it's a great idea to be entirely reactionary. If we are going to go out in a theater of conflict, it isn't good to begin the training after the battle has broken out. It's best to be in training before the battle breaks out so that there is a preparedness, so that if conflict happens, we're in a position of readiness. And we can look at that and say, well, obviously in a military theater, we don't want to send our first responders. I don't want to have somebody being recruited on the side of the street to be a firefighter after the city is ablaze. Do you know what I mean? I want there to be training ahead of time. I don't want to send somebody out into war. The first time that they're holding a gun is when people are shooting at them. That's probably not a great idea. There ought to be training and preparation that happens ahead of time. That's the same reason why we end up sending people to school for any number of different kind of trades or jobs or whatever else. I don't really want people to be doing on-the-job training if they're a heart surgeon. That's probably not a great idea. Brain surgeon, they might get away with a little more. But you see some of this stuff, maybe not. But you see, I want the training to happen ahead of time. And you do the training for what's coming after. David is making sure that the training and the preparation and all of the things are needed for what's going to be coming after. Well, how are we supposed to do that in our lives? What does that look like in our relationships with the people around us? If we believe that we're in the last days, what are we doing to equip those who are, maybe going to survive us, that are going to be in the last of the last days? What is my responsibility to be able to tell them or communicate to them about the situation or the conditions that they can expect and how to fight back against that? How to be equipped to be able to deal with all of the issues and problems that they're going to face in life? If all of our preparation for our young is only educational and not spiritual, we're doing them a disservice, I believe. We have to be able to train them for the spiritual realities, not just of, hey, we'll try and make this a nice land for you to be able to enjoy. And Solomon, do your best to just kind of enjoy all the wealth that I'll accumulate, and I'll give it over to you, and I hope that you manage it well. That would be an unfortunate thing if David wasn't also looking to be an example to him by way of his own personal devotion. How is Solomon going to have any sort of a shot towards doing anything that's going to be really beneficial or worthwhile for the sake of the Lord if he doesn't have the heart? We can do all sorts of things by way of like religious activity, but if the heart isn't there, what good is the activity? If it's religion and not relationship, what's the point? What are we doing? If we come to church only because we're wanting to check off the box to make ourselves feel good, but we don't actually have any sort of desire to know the Lord on the rest of the days of the week, how are we actually communicating the way that the Scripture would tell us to, when we rise up or when we lie down, when we're on the way, when we're in our house, that we're supposed to be communicating things to our children about what the Lord is doing and how the Lord is moving, and these kind of spiritual realities that we see going on around us. There's a lot of hurt and broken people, and it's increasingly so. People are hurt and broken. Those that were here on Wednesday, I made reference. My dear friend Travis Graves was this last week doing a teen camp. He was helping lead a teen camp in Arizona. He was invited to come out there and be one of the guest speakers. And in his communicating to the youth that were there, he was very deliberate in trying to share with them of the great amount of problems that have happened to them and those like them, especially of those that feel so isolated because they've been sexually abused. My friend Travis, dear friend, was able to share of his own testimony of his own kind of problems, and the anger and the resentment, and all that, the unforgiveness that drove him when he was a young man, and that he was able to communicate to these kids, to these youths, about the freedom and the forgiveness and the grace and love in all of the appropriate kind of ways that comes with a right relationship with Jesus Christ. He told me when he was on the phone with me, he said, this is the hardest teen camp I've ever been to. And he was saying there was, of the crowd of, I don't know how many, a couple hundred kids that were there, he said it was about a third of them, a quarter to a third of them that responded and came forward to say that they were victims in a similar way. Can you imagine? Where are the youth supposed to do in situations like that when they feel like they can't talk to anybody? He was talking about certain kids, and I could wish that this is something isolated only to Arizona, but I fear it's not. Kids are being raped multiple times, and going from a foster family that is abusing them to another one, taken out of that foster family because they're saying, this isn't right, or whatever ends up happening. They're removed from one foster family, they go to the next, and the same thing ends up being repeated to them. How long do you think it would be before a child gets cynical and jaded? How long do you think it would be before they end up having mental health issues? It's not a wonder they have mental health issues. Look at what they're going through. And all the while they're being subjected to a public school system that is telling them that, sexual expression and sexual adventure is what life basically is about. And what are they supposed to go to? What are they supposed to think? Where are they going to go? Where is the preparation that's being made for them to handle things in a spiritual sense, of the things that are really at the core of all these things, to know that there is a God who loves them? Where are they going to go to hear that? Is it likely, do you think, that they're going to be brought to church? Is it likely when they come to church that they're going to be able to listen? Or wouldn't it be good for them to be able to have some people around that are watching out? Some friends maybe that are like kind of spiritually in tune with what is going on. They would actually share with them, hey, there is a God who actually loves you. And you end up saying, yeah, but I'll be made fun of and I'll be mocked. I'm glad that didn't stop our Lord Jesus. There are people who have real needs. We are in a world that is increasingly broken. And we can end up going through and doing all of the different kind of, playing church kinds of dances that end up happening. Or there can be a seriousness to say we have to be preparatory for what is coming down the pike. Because however bad it is for us now, how much worse is it going to be for our children? We only have to go back, just reverse a generation or two. And for however bad things seem to be, in the sexual revolution of the 60s or into the 70s, doesn't it seem like it's far worse now? Far darker? Much more nefarious than it was before? So much more malicious? And you see the continuation of these things where kids are becoming more and more violent, more and more dark in their thoughts, more and more likely to attempt suicide. Why do you think that that's the case? It leads me to wonder, where's the church? If all we're doing is just kind of being lukewarm. Let's not be that way. What if the Lord wants to do a great revival? What if he does in the next generation and it's not ours? I personally, when I remember coming to Calais, it was like 9.5 years ago that we came for the first time. But I remember coming to a place where it was like I was aware that this area has been spiritually very hard ground. That this has been a stronghold, it seems, for our enemy for a very long time. That you look back, there are times at certain times in history where there was a move of God, but it would kind of fade and it would kind of ebb and flow like always. But that this was particularly been a very challenging area, and it became very apparent to me that that maybe the people were a lot like the landscape. It's great for growing blueberries, gravelly and all that stuff as they can be. But that, there's, just like in Maine, there aren't a lot of like natural farmland. It's not like out in the Midwest, you throw something in the ground out there, it sounds like, and it grows really easy. Just watch out for the tornadoes. But here, if you're going to have farmland, you see this over in like Unity and Thorndike and some of those areas where, you have some of the Amish communities that are out there. They have these like really wonderful rock walls and all. And it's because they ended up taking those rocks out of the field that they wanted to be able to plant. It took some preparatory work. It kills me when I see these fields becoming overgrown now. Being left desolate, and the farmland that had been so prepared is just being wasted, Nevertheless, I remember coming out here and having the sense that the Lord ended up saying, hey, if you never end up seeing the harvest because all you're doing is picking the rocks out of the farmland, so be it. And if that's what the Lord has for us, then let's do the best that we can at doing the preparation. Let's pick all the rocks that we can, Let's make it fertile ground. If not for us and for our sake, let's do it for the sake of the generation coming after us. That there would be a spiritual readiness, a fertile ground for the hearts of the people that are coming after us. Let's do the preparatory work to gather the stuff necessary, so to speak, for the building of the temple. I've gone on a long time in these first 8 verses. 3 chapters, this guy says. Let's keep going. You guys you see where I'm at on some of this stuff. I'm so impressed by the way that David was active. Didn't just stay back. He was active in this preparation. Anyway, verse 9 says, Now when Tou, king of Hamath, heard how David had smitten all the host of Hadarezer, king of Zobah, he sent Hadoram, his son, to King David to inquire of his welfare and to congratulate him, because he had fought against Hadarezer and smitten him. For Hadarezer had war with Tou, and with him all manner of vessels of gold and silver and brass. Them also King David dedicated unto the Lord, with the silver and the gold that he brought from all these nations, from Edom and from Moab and from the children of Ammon and from the Philistines and from Amalek. Amazing. You're seeing there's this accumulation. He's gathering it from all over, enemies and friends. And the enemies of the enemies who end up being friends. I'll take it from wherever. He's dedicating all of these things to the Lord. It says, verse 12, Moreover, Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, slew of the Edomites in the valley of Salt 18,000. And he put garrisons in Edom, and all the Edomites became David's servants. Thus the Lord preserved David whithersoever he went. It's the second time in this chapter that we've seen that, the Lord preserving and helping David. Verse 14 says, So David reigned over all Israel and executed judgment and justice among all his people. And Joab, the son of Zeruiah, was over the host, and Jehoshaphat, the son of Ahilud, recorder, and Zadok, the son of Ahitub, and Abimelech, the son of Abiathar, were the priests, and Shavshah was scribe, and Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, was over the Cherethites and the Pelethites, and the sons of David were chief about the king. So, he's doing this, and he gives us, again, some of the description of his administration. He's not doing all these things by himself, and neither will we. No man goes and sets about to be able to conquer kingdoms the way that David did without other people that are also involved in that fight, Moving into chapter 19, it says, Now it came to pass after this that Nahash, the king of the children of Ammon, died, and his son reigned in his stead. And David said, I will show kindness unto Hanun, the son of Nahash, because his father showed kindness to me. And David sent messengers to comfort him concerning his father. So the servants of David came into the land of the children of Ammon to Hanun to comfort him. This gives us in these first 2 verses the reasons why these things were happening, and the reasonable expression that ends up being made by David, trying to come with no ulterior motive, but to bring comfort, to come with a one of those Hallmark greeting cards type of thing. Let me give you a card of condolence. Well, it says, verse 3, But the princes of the children of Ammon said to Hanun, Thinkest thou that David doth honor thy father, that he hath sent comforters unto thee? Are not his servants come unto thee for to search and to overthrow and to spy out the land? They may have had good reason. You see all the conquests that David was doing around. They may have thought that this was just a ruse. But you see how paranoid they end up being. It's always good for us to be able to, again, if we're engaged in any sort of conflict, it's always really good for us to identify who the enemy is. To be able to recognize who our friends are, who are our allies, and who are our enemies. Here, these of Ammon were not recognizing appropriately. It says, verse 4, Wherefore Hanun took David's servants and shaved them, and cut off their garments in the midst hard by their buttocks, and sent them away. You've got to love King James. So they ended up, where we can read, it says that they shaved them. It actually, in the other record of this, in Samuel, it says that they shaved half their beard. So you can imagine what that would look like, and cut off half their clothes up to, their buttocks. This is a shameful treating. And this was part of the deal, especially culturally then. Having a beard was a glory to an individual, to a man. To have a clean-shaven face was actually a picture that you were under servitude. So having a good full-size beard would actually be a picture of freedom, that you were the one that was in authority, you know. It's become not that in our current day and age. So it loses a little bit like, what's the deal? They shaved. Okay, good for them, you know. The cutting of the clothes would be more so, but it was as much a shameful thing. Verse 5, it says, Then there went certain and told David how the men were served. And he sent to meet them, for the men were greatly ashamed. And the king said, Tarry at Jericho until your beards be grown, and then return. And so you see David trying to protect them. He wasn't looking to march them right out. He didn't like say, hey, we need CNN, Fox News, all these to be able to come out, get a picture of these guys so we can use it as some sort of, propaganda to go and fight these guys. David was like, why don't you just hang back for a bit? We'll take care of this, but you don't need to. We don't need to expose the things that make you feel ashamed. He kept him in a protected position. Well, it says, verse 6, and when the children of Ammon saw that they had made themselves odious to David, so they recognized, that was probably not the right thing. Now David is really, maybe we ticked off the wrong guy here. David's got a bit of a track record. He's got a bit of a reputation. He's not somebody that you really want to be messing with so much, and now they've made themselves enemies, where maybe before there was some manner of peace. They've made themselves enemies, and they become aware of it. The reasonable thing, you would think, would be to go and apologize. But no, they doubled down. It says, middle of verse 6, Hanun and the children of Ammon sent 1,000 talents of silver to hire them chariots and horsemen out of Mesopotamia and out of Syria, Maacah, and out of Zobah. So they hired 32,000 chariots, and the king of Maacah and his people, who came and pitched before Medeba, and the children of Ammon gathered themselves together from their cities and came to battle. They doubled down. They didn't recognize appropriately who their friend or ally was. They took him as an enemy and wanted to be able to pick a fight. And instead of being humble and apologetic, they end up saying, no, you know what, we'll get other people rallied to our cause, and we'll try and go against the one that otherwise would have been their friend. This is ill-advised, Anyway, they come to battle. Verse 8 says, and when David heard of it, he sent Joab and all the host of the mighty men. And the children of Ammon came out and put the battle in array before the gate of the city. And the kings that were come were by themselves in the field. So Joab, he comes into a place where he's facing the Ammonites and was going to fight against them, not realizing that there were hired mercenaries from Syria that were going to come around behind. It says, verse 10, now when Joab saw that the battle was set against him before and behind, he chose of all the choice of Israel and put them in array against the Syrians. And the rest of the people he delivered unto the hand of Abishai his brother, and set themselves in array against the children of Ammon. I love verse 12. It says, and he said, if the Syrians be too strong for me, then thou shalt help me. But if the children of Ammon be too strong for thee, then I will help thee. Be of good courage, and let us behave ourselves valiantly for our people and for the cities of our God, and let the Lord do that which is good in his sight. Here, Joab recognizes, we are kind of surrounded here. We've got a two-front war that's going to be waged here, a two-front battle, where we've got enemy in front of us and now enemy behind us. What are we going to do? Joab says, you know what, let me take those mighty men. You take the bulk of the force and you continue to go forward towards Ammon, the Ammonites. I'll turn around and we'll fight. We'll fight back to back. I'll get your 6. You get mine. We'll fight back to back and repel the force. And you'll notice the way that he talks about this is at no point did he say, hey, what if we're both overrun? What are we going to do? He did not seem to leave option for defeat to be in the equation. Hey, if they get to be too much, then we'll come and help you. We'll handle these guys. If they're too much, we'll come and help you. But if we find that they're a little bit too much, then, if you could send some other guys, we're going to beat them. Let's just go and let's be valiant. Some of your versions may say, let's play the man, you know. Let's go. Remember how when we were kids, and we ended up playing war? Let's do it just like when we were kids, you know. Let's play the man. And so, going out to be able, let's be men about this and go and fight and remember who we're fighting for. And I think that's always really helpful. Let's behave ourselves valiantly for our people and for the cities of our God, and let the Lord do that which is good in his sight. We'll do our part, and God will do his part. And we go back to back with those that are our allies to be able to repel wherever the forces of evil come from. We're going to maintain the right kind of perspective, watching out for the back of our brother, you know. Well, it says, verse 14, so Joab and the people that were with him drew nigh before the Syrians unto the battle, and they fled before him. So all of a sudden, and maybe Joab had a little bit of a reputation along with these mighty men. Of course, some of these mighty men we've read about, one of them killing 800 guys, and another one killing lions and lion-like men and all this stuff, three of them being able to bust through and draw water for David and come back. We read about these guys before. The Syrians see, we're fighting these guys? Yeah, I'm out. And they start to run. Well, it says, verse 15, when the children of Ammon saw that the Syrians were fled, they likewise fled before Abishai, his brother, and entered into the city. Then Joab came to Jerusalem. So they ended up having this great victory, and it didn't matter. Seemed like they were overwhelmed, seemed like the forces were larger than, didn't matter. They went out valiantly knowing who they were fighting against and who they were fighting for. It's always good for us to be able to recognize that. Who is on our side and who is our enemy. It says, verse 16, when the Syrians saw that they were put to the worse before Israel, they sent messengers and drew forth the Syrians that were beyond the river, and Shobach, the captain of the host of Hadarezer, went before them. And it was told David, and he gathered all Israel, and passed over Jordan, and came upon them, and set the battle in array against them. So when David had put the battle in array against the Syrians, they fought with him. But the Syrians fled before Israel, and David slew of the Syrians 7,000 men which fought in chariots, and 40,000 footmen, and killed Shobach, the captain of the host. And when the servants of Hadarezer saw that they were put to the worst before Israel, they made peace with David and became his servants. Neither would the Syrians help the children of Ammon anymore. They're like, yeah, we're not doing this. You had a beef with David, and you drew us into it. There was some money on the line. It ain't worth it. Don't send us your money anymore. We don't want to be part of this anymore. These are some bad dudes. Like they are strong and fit for war. And so there is this kind of expanse of authority that David ends up having. Well, it doesn't stop there. We come into chapter 20. I said 3 chapters. Verse 1 says, and it came to pass that after the year was expired, at the time that kings go out to battle, Joab led forth the power of the army and wasted the country of the children of Ammon, and came and besieged Rabbah. But David tarried at Jerusalem. That line right there in verse 1 gives us a reminder of all kinds of other stuff that happened when he should have been out to war, and he wasn't. And Joab was out conducting the war. It says, David tarried at Jerusalem, and Joab smote Rabbah and destroyed it. It's true. I mean, they were broken. You may remember in the other account of this, back in Samuel, the whole deal with Bathsheba, perhaps David's indiscretion and adultery that ended up happening, and all. Joab ended up sending for David to say, "Hey, I'm about to take this city. If you want credit for it, you better come now." And so David goes and takes it technically. But Joab really was the one who smote Rabbah and destroyed it. It says, verse 2, and David took the crown of their king from off his head and found it to weigh a talent of gold, and there were precious stones in it. And it was set upon David's head, and he brought also exceeding much spoil out of the city. And he brought out the people that were in it, and cut them with saws and with harrows of iron and with axes. Even so dealt David with all the cities of the children of Ammon, and David and all the people returned to Jerusalem. And so we see not only were the Syrians dealt with, the Ammonites were dealt with. Again, all of this kind of expanse and security that is being provided through strength. There is a peace that Solomon is going to know because David was a man of war. And that ends up being a similar theme as we've seen through any number of different history, that peace so often comes through strength. Like it or not, there's the way that people respond. If there continues to be a weakness, you'll see people looking to exploit it. See the way that they try and poke and prod. If they know that there is a vulnerability, they're going to be looking to exploit it. So David, he ends up having these continued victories. Well, the next one, verses 4 through 8, are particularly enjoyable as well. It says, "And it came to pass after this that there arose war at Gezer with the Philistines." So the Philistines are kind of flaring up again. It says, "At which time Sibbecai the Hushathite slew Sippai that was of the children of the giant, and they were subdued." This guy takes down a giant. It says, verse 5, "And there was war again with the Philistines, and Elhanan the son of Jair slew Lamai, the brother of Goliath the Gittite." You remember that guy, Goliath, whose spear's staff was like a weaver's beam. Presumably, this guy, not just that they're the children of the giant or the brother of Goliath, it's kind of indicating that these guys were also giants in their own right, large men. Goliath, by the way, just for some sort of height's sake, to give some sort of an idea, would be about as tall as to this black beam that goes across. Is probably about how tall that guy was. The guy was a house. I mean, he was big. And it wasn't just that he was like tall and stilty. He wasn't like, Victor Wembanyama or something. The guy walks around on twigs. This guy would have been like huge, Goliath seemed to be almost as wide as he was tall. Not exactly, but you know what I mean. Like this guy was just big. Anyway, we have these giants that are running around. Well, they're falling. They're dropping. Verse 6, it says, "And yet again there was war at Gath, where was a man of great stature, whose fingers and toes were 24, 6 on each hand and 6 on each foot. And he also was the son of the giant." So here comes this mutant dude, 24 little phalanges, and it doesn't matter however many fingers he's got, he's going down. Doesn't matter however much extra thrust he gets with that extra pinky toe or whatever. He's heading for destruction, because doesn't matter what things look like. The reality is, it doesn't matter what things look like. God is able to overcome for whatever the obstacles end up, however big or however massive, however difficult. What is the Lord really looking for is for those of us who trust Him to be about His business, to be active, doing the things that He's called us to do. Not relaxed and sitting on our hands, not wishing for other opportunities or wishing that things had gone better. Let's be active doing the things that God has set before us. These men are active, and it doesn't matter. It says, verse 7, "When he defied Israel, Jonathan, the son of Shimeah, David's brother, slew him." He's flapping his jaw, and he gets slapped down. You're done. It says, verse 8, "These were born unto the giant in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servants." They rose up, and they were brought down. That is the way that it is always going to be. Always going to be for the servants of God against their enemies. There is no enemy that is going to come against the children of God and will prevail. We have promises by God against those. We have nothing to fear at all. There is no weapon that's fashioned against us that will prosper. He who is for us is greater than he who is against us. If God is for us, who can be against us? And it really doesn't matter, Jonathan, Saul's son from back before, you may remember this. He ended up having that time where the Philistine garrison was above him. He says to his armor bearer, "Hey, let's go and take him, because there's nothing that prevents the Lord to save by many or by few." So what if it seems like we're against long odds? So what? God is on our side. We have victory assured. You can read the back of the book. I would encourage you to make it to the back of the book. We get victory. All of the saints of God are going to rejoice in the victory and the spoils that are won for us because of our chief victor, Jesus Christ. We don't have to worry about what it's going to look like for whatever we're going to be, whatever way we're going to be thought of, or whatever kind of concerns or issues we might end up facing. So what? So what? Let all of the hordes come against us. God is for us. Who can be against us? And so for us to continue, and this is where I would encourage you again, be busy doing the things that the Lord would call you to. Be mindful of the preparation maybe that the Lord would have you. There's going to be things for us to be able to do. There are going to be reputations that you can end up enjoying as you're about the Lord's business. There may be accolades. There may be rewards that you attain. Let's give them back to the Lord who gave it to us in the first place. Amen? If you please stand, let's sing a song.